Morning everyone, thanks for joining us today. As you all know, my name is Leslie. I'm the Managing Director of APSCo Australia, and today we are going to be talking about offshoring and demystifying some of the myths, I guess, facts, digging into the detail and looking at the practicalities of what's actually involved, what it can do for your business, the benefits, but also having a very frank conversation with the two lovely guests that I'm joined by today, and taking your questions. So I believe there's a slide deck that we may dip into time to time throughout today's session, and it will be shared with you once we send out the recording. As usual, this is being recorded. But the idea of today is to have a discussion and bring you into that and very much talk about anything that you would like answered, and really sort of debunk some of the myths that sort of sit around this whole topic that has become very hotly discussed in our market, and no doubt many others across the globe. So I want to welcome my two guests this morning, Rod Hore, who's probably a very familiar face to everyone on this call, and Mradula Palore from IMS. I'm going to hand over to both of you to introduce yourselves. Before I do that, I just want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, please put it in either the Q&A or the chat, and I will go through them with Mandy and Rod as they come in. So you don't need to wait till the end, you just fire away as you think of your question. Mandy, I'm going to start with you. Would you like to say good morning to everyone?
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mradula Palore. I keep it Mandy so that you can pronounce it. And I'm working with IMS for over 6 years now. And my role is I head sales division for the UK and APAC sales. Well, I speak with the business owners. We talk about outsourcing model. So there's a lot that we'll be covering today, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this session. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks, Mandy. Rod?
Good morning, everybody. This is quite an important topic and conversation for what I do with myself. Some people know me because of the work we do with mergers and acquisitions, but for the last well over 15 years now, almost 20 years, this has been a topic that's caught our attention, because when HHMC was travelling overseas and going to conferences and talking to people in other countries about how businesses were progressing, we'd come back to Australia and offshore outsourcing was not something that anyone wanted to talk about. And at the same time, we got introduced to IMS, and I'm now an onshore advisor with IMS, so I work with them closely. But the thing that has changed is, since COVID came along, I think some of the barriers and some of the things that people were, I suppose, a little concerned about got blown away. They realised they couldn't manage people remotely and so on. And so now it's a very mature conversation in Australia, like it is in the US and the UK and other countries. And it's a great time to dive into this and talk about it in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Rod. And I'm probably going to go over what you just said a little bit more. Before we opened up to everybody, you did say if this was 2 years ago, this would look like a very different conversation to the one that we have today. Obviously, we're in a fairly flat market, and it's been quite challenging economically everywhere. And recruitment's often the barometer for that economic condition. Do you think that is the sole trigger for the kind of the heightened or growing interest in this?
I think the fluctuation over the last 5 years down massive highs and then back to reality, I suppose, has certainly meant that organisations have needed to adapt and change really quickly. But also at the same time, the flow of people coming from the UK and Ireland and other places that could join the staffing industry here in Australia dried up because we closed the borders for a couple of years, and costs have risen. So there's been all of these factors that I think have happened. And as I said, the attitude's the wrong word, the availability or the consideration of offshoring has also changed during that period, because people have seen that actually we can do things slightly differently to the way we were last decade.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just economic, although that's really important.
Yeah, of course.
But I think there's a whole range of things that have happened. Many changes have happened to the industry during this last 5 years, and the rise or the acceptance of offshore outsourcing is just one of those.
And when you talk about attitude and how have attitudes changed, and what do we still need to change in terms of people's attitudes towards this?
Well, there's a lot of pub talk, as there is in valuations and mergers and acquisitions and everything else. There's a lot of pub talk. And so I think you need to get to a more sophisticated level and constantly be thinking about, of all of the strategic tools that I've got to run my business, how does offshore outsourcing fit into that, and how am I going to apply it compared to other things? Technology, obviously, is one of those. Use of my onshore resources. And so it's not just cost. Oh, I can get this cheap and think about it in a different way. It's actually, how do I make this as part of my organisation and part of my process? And it's a serious discussion and a serious consideration for an organisation. And so a lot of people have tried things that have failed, but partly because not everything works, and there's some reasons that things fail. But there's a lot of people who've gone into this with their eyes not wide open and not with the forethought that maybe they should have had, and so that breaks down fairly quickly. And the conversations in Australia now are at a more mature level, and that's really nice.
Okay. Mandy, when that conversation starts with a business for you, what should they expect? What does it look like in terms of, the process, the steps they follow, and I guess then their own mindset in terms of where should they be at? When are they pushing that green light and they're truly ready to invest in this?
That's a very interesting question, Leslie, and I think we get to ask this question a lot. I think when we get into this discussion, what is important for us is to understand the purpose, why they want to outsource. What is the reason? What are the current challenges that the team is facing? So it is important in such discussions to understand what is the purpose for outsourcing, why you want to outsource. And then we get deep, but that's when we get into a conversation wherein we understand how does the process look like. Because see, when we talk about outsourcing, and as Rod mentioned, of course, it is cost effective. Absolutely. But then it also gives you flexibility to scale up and down. So it's a sustainable model. However, it's important for both the partners to be equally involved and committed in a partnership. So when any company wants to outsource, we want to understand what is the current process that their team is using. So we want to, because we work as an extension to the team. So, and that helps the onshore team to focus on core activities. So there are many activities like sourcing, mapping, CV formatting, administrative tasks, database management. So there's a lot that has been done, but it is important where the onshore team needs help, so that they focus in building their relationship with clients and candidates, and we help them with the office. We help them with the activities which is time consuming. So it's important to understand what is the process, and before we start, there's a proper implementation plan that we have in place. So we get to learn more about the business. There's a training that happens, and we record the trainings as well. We introduce the offshore team members along with the account managers, so that we understand. So they get to speak with their offshore team members and understand what is their experience, what do they want. So this partnership actually works hand in hand. And it's important to involve the offshore team members in their morning catch-up calls, so daily catch-up calls. And also when we get into partnership, at least for the first 2 to 3 months, we suggest to have weekly performance catch-up, so that we understand how the team is performing. So it is more like a strategic partnership, not just a transactional wherein the work has been given and you need to do, but then it's more about conversation, getting feedback from the onshore team members as well. So there's the only difference is they're not sitting next to you in the office. They're sitting here managed by our leadership, so that they don't have to invest time.
can you paint a little bit more of a picture of that? Because I think for a long time there was this notion that I'm offshoring, it's a solo person sat at home on their own, that they've got no no one's actually overseeing what they're doing, and it's just a function that's been handed somewhere else, and it's a lone wolf. But actually it looks very different to that. So can you sort of paint a picture in terms of what it looks like on the ground?
Absolutely, Leslie. So just to give a slight background about IMS, we are total staff of over 3,000 employees, and we have 3 offices, 2 in India and 1 in the Philippines. So we work from office. And I think things changed, as Rod mentioned. It absolutely changed after COVID, when people realized that the work can be offshore. So when we talk the way we operate is, of course, first we discuss about the requirements. We understand what are the needs and so on. And then we introduce our subject matter expert, which is our operations team.
Yeah.
So they are actually introduced to our clients so that they understand their operational needs. What is the process? How do we operate? And then we send the structure that we are following so that we integrate into that. We introduce the onshore. So it totally depends on the kind of work, the volume, how many resources are we talking about, or how many recruiters are we talking about. So we introduce the team along with the account manager. So we provide account manager as well. And as I said earlier, the reason why we do that is primarily to ensure that the onshore team do not have to invest time in managing the offshore resources.
Right. Okay.
So it is account manager's responsibility to ensure that the resources are looked after, the coaching, training is done by them, the productivity report is sent to the onshore team at the end of the day so that they can see the occupancy, they can see the performance and so on.
Yeah.
And it is really, really important to have feedback, to get feedback. So once the work is being done, share the feedback, especially in the initial phase, because the more you interact, the more you share feedback, you will always see the better outcome. And you can connect with your team on real time, just like on Zoom, Teams, and so on. So they have all the facilities. So the entire infrastructure setup is done at the office. They have all the required tools to work on. So that's, it is, as I said, the only difference is they're not in Australia sitting next to you, but absolutely working your hours with your team, 9 hours a day, 8 productive hours, and 5 days a week.
Right.
It is interesting, Leslie, if I can add to that. I think that's one of the misconceptions about offshoring is that there's this sort of continuum. So, at one end, if you wanted a little bit of research done or something like that, you could go to Fiverr or to Upwork or to freelancer.com and you could get somebody to do a little bit of research for you. But that's different from making something as part of the process of your organization. And then you've actually got to make a decision about, I suppose, sophistication and risk. And it's not just small company, big company. I mean, it's IT security, it's privacy laws, and so on and so on and so on. All of the regulations that you may be needing to comply with, not only in Australia, but also possibly in the country of where the person is sitting. And so there's a level of sophistication with who you might be talking to and how you might go about the process.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get back to the people offshore or onshore at your end, Mandy, later, but we've got a question here from John, who's asking what type of skills are available and being used by existing clients in Australia. And the second part to his question is, does the costing change based on the skills that are required? Mandy, I'm assuming that's one for you.
Certainly. So yes, costing changed from skills to skills. And as I said, so again, a little more about IMS. I'm sure after this session, we will be sharing a link, and so that it's a kind of ebook that will give more idea. But then within IMS, we have multiple divisions. So we provide recruitment solutions, we provide back office solutions, accounting and payroll, we provide marketing solutions, and we provide IT solutions as well. So it totally depends from skills to skills, which service or which activity you want to outsource. So if you're looking for a recruiter who can speak with candidates, there's a different infrastructure setup that we provide to them, wherein they dial in, they speak with candidates, they represent themselves from the company that they're working with and not IMS. So their LinkedIn page, everything represent as per the client and not as per IMS. Similarly, the other activities could be administrative support, which could be market mapping, kind of more research support, database cleansing or reactivation or skill coding. So there are different activities that can be explored. It totally depends where is their team investing more time.
Yeah, okay. Is that, I don't know whether you can answer this or not, but is there a pattern in terms of, a typical recruitment firm might start, let's say in, back office payroll, but then over time, and what does that timeline look like? Do they expand that offshore team and into what skill sets?
I think Mandy should answer this, but I think it does vary a little bit by the size of the organisation. So IMS has teams of over 100 people working with certain organisations, and they're obviously very strategic partnership type conversations about how to get started and how to do those activities. But IMS also works with startup companies, so one person, and how do they help them and what do they do in that situation. So there's a massive variation in terms of where the company is sitting at and where they're trying to go. Yeah. Sorry, Mandy, had to jump in.
No, absolutely. And yes, Leslie, let's start. If they start with back office solutions, right? If they're facing any if they need any support in accounts payables, receivables, credit control, anything of that sort, yes, the team supports. They get dedicated resources who are helping them. And slowly, just to give an example, as Rod mentioned, we're working with companies where we have a team strength of 100, and one of our clients, they have a team strength of 250 people, and they have a dedicated space. So it is only their team that can enter and exit from their space. So it's a dedicated floor that has been given to them. Having said that, yes, we work with startups and we work with small, medium-based companies as well. So yes, it's all about the process that needs to be set up, and a clear communication, a very transparent communication that is required, where what can be done and what can't be done. So that's where the transparency and the partnership comes into picture, and it will always flourish if both the partners are extremely transparent with each other.
Okay.
And probably they start with back office solutions, but then at a later stage, if they need any support in the recruitment part or in the marketing part as well, it's kind of one-stop shop, so that you don't have to go to multiple providers. All the solution can be provided under one roof. Right.
Okay. And what does it look like when it doesn't work so well, or things fail? What is it? Obviously you've talked about communication there, but is there a pattern when things don't go right, and typically what's happening?
Sure. So what we say partnership is like a marriage. It is a communication. It is absolutely communication, and a very transparent communication, which also means that at times you will get into difficult conversation with your partners, and that is from both ends. When it fails is when there is not equal commitment or contribution from both the partners, which means at times when companies outsource, but then they're not sharing feedback, they're not coming on calls, they're not sharing as to how does the performance look like, or the shortlisted candidates that has been shared, how does it look like? Are they on the right track? Is the search right? And so on. And I see Rod has shared the screen. Amazing. Yes. So if you see here, these are the 6 common reasons why offshoring fails. Yeah. So initially when I started, it is really important to understand what is the purpose of outsourcing, and what is the strategy. And that strategy, when we talk about, is starting from top to bottom. So as the business owners, they understand the concept of outsourcing, they understand how it is going to affect, how it's going to benefit and add value. But if the operations team, and especially the team that communicate with each other on day-to-day basis, if they don't understand that we're working as an extension, not as a competition, it's not a threat. Many a times, the reason why we have seen partnership failing is because the lack of communication between the onshore and offshore operations team. Yeah. So if they consider offshore as a threat or as a competition. And if they don't share feedback is when it would fail.
Yeah.
At times, when again, in outsourcing, there are some unrealistic expectations as well. This has been outsourced, it needs to be done. But then we are not talking, we are not communicating. This is how the process looks like. This is how we want to be presented to candidates and clients. So it is important for offshore team to understand what are the values, how you want to be presented. So that's where it's all about communication, sharing the right expectations, and feedback. I think that's the core. We need that.
It's certainly not. I think there was, a notion or an idea that it was a bit of a set and forget. It's like, oh, I've put that over there now. I don't need to worry about it. And that's kind of almost how offshoring was seen. And
I would actually describe it completely the opposite and say, you're about to employ some staff. You've got to work out how to onboard with them and motivate them and communicate with them and lead them. They just happen to be located in a different location.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of complexity because they're in another country and all that sort of stuff. So, what Mandy's been describing is this is the support we'll give you, but you still need to have that attitude that they're your staff, you're leading them, they're your team. How do you integrate them? How do you work with them?
So on that, how do you select the right or the people that are going to work with, company A, B, and C? And obviously while there is that distance or disconnect with the distance, they need to have a cultural fit, I'm assuming, and they need to be, as you said, integrated into the team. So you've got the team in Australia, the team offshore. Obviously, you've spoken about fear and, people's hesitancy, and we hear it, oh, I'm going to lose my job or whatever. So there's that need to integrate the two and have them work together and understand each other as if they were, side-by-side colleagues. How do you manage that? How are you selecting people? And your people in India, wherever they might be, Mandy, what are they looking for? What do they want? And what's getting the most output from those people that's going to benefit Australian businesses here? Lots of questions in there, sorry.
I love it, because these are the questions that we generally discuss on a daily basis with all the business owners. Yeah. So these are the questions that everyone would want to know. How does it work? Yeah, so we hire almost 100 to 150 people on monthly basis. We hire graduates, and then we have a robust training structure. So the initial 4 weeks is all about recruitment. How does it work? And what is recruitment? What are job boards? What is healthcare sector? So what is nursing? What is doctors? What is IT engineering, and so on? And then we have IT bootcamp and healthcare academy as well. So basis the client's requirement, we train our resources accordingly. So the training is a robust training structure is designed for them for 3 months. So when we present our resources to our clients, they are trained resources who understand different job boards. They understand all the CRMs. They understand the requirement, Boolean search, key strings, and so on. Now, and also basis the requirement. So let's say just an example, if it's an IT client or if it's an IT company, the candidates or the resources that we present are coming from the same background. They're graduates in the same industry, in the same sector. And when we introduce our resources to our clients, of course, there's an introduction. It's not like we have shortlisted and we start working. So as I said, we work hand in hand. So we introduce the team to the onshore team members. And it is important to have a dedicated account manager in Australia as well, who communicates with the team on daily basis, on real-time basis. So we introduce the team, they speak with them, and they actually it's more like an interview / introduction is what we always say, where they get a chance, an opportunity to speak with their onshore team. It is them who decide if they are fit for that. So before that, of course, we train them, we give them an overview about the company. This is how the values look like. This is how the company operates, so that they get an understanding of the company, the ethos, values, and so on.
Yeah.
Am I stuck? Okay, perfect. I thought I was stuck. Yeah. And yes, once the introduction is done, and of course from IMS, there will always be an account manager. With the strategic clients, as Rod mentioned, the team strength of more than 50, 100 or 200, they have dedicated account managers. So they are the one who are actually working with the team absolutely 9 hours. But then team strength of less than 5 or 8 people, we provide shared account managers. But it is their responsibility to look after the resources. So we introduce the team along with the account manager. They speak with them. They say this is the right fit, and that's how we start. And once we start is when we want to understand the process, the way you operate on your CRM. We have good hands on job adder. You name the CRMs, we have the experience, but then it totally depends. Every company operates differently. So we want to understand how do you operate. We record the session with client's consent so that if resources have to go through it again, they can review it. And also in the future, if they want to upscale their team, they don't have to train them. It is account manager's responsibility to train the resources and look after the absenteeism or any attrition that happens.
Yeah. Mandy, I think from all my visits over to India and talking about this for a long time, I think it's seen as a very desired job for people in India when they come and join IMS. I mean, they're getting to work with international clients, they're getting to learn a lot of skills. So that seems to be the case. So I've actually been a customer. So my database management, some of my social media, some of my contracts and things like that are actually done with the assistance of somebody who works for IMS. And over the years, you know, it's not been hard to motivate them to the work that HHMC is doing, because I think it's seen as a very, I don't know, it's a prestigious job, is maybe the term I would use. And so, and IMS, I think, has a reputation for looking after its people, good leadership, good training, and all those sorts of things, and also seen, therefore, as a great company to go and work for. And it wins awards for those sorts of things. So there's a good pull factor into this type of industry in those countries, and you know, IMS does its part in that area as well.
Yes.
So, thank you. Excuse my dog there. We have a question from Solskjaer that says, given that admin tasks may not take up a significant portion of time, is your VA, and I'm thinking virtual assistant here, which is not what we're talking about today, so we probably need to go back and address that one, capable of taking on additional responsibilities such as marketing, payroll and support?
That's actually a great question, because we get the question from smaller companies in Australia. I want to hire someone and I want them to do some resourcing for me, but then I want them to actually do some payroll on a Tuesday. And you go, no, that's not how it works. So I think just as if you were hiring somebody in Australia, you are training them to be a specialist in whatever it might be, and mixing things from different disciplines is not a good area unless it's purely administrative, you know, like collect timesheets or something. So you've got to be very careful about defining the function that you want your resource to work with, and using them accordingly. And I have a personal trigger, which is the word VA. Okay, so here we are. I always consider a virtual assistant to be a term for I don't know, organising meetings and making sure your dry cleaning's done, and you know, I mean, you know, it just to me is a term for either really administrative or something that is very part-time and used occasionally. Whereas I think, you know, again, if I can use that continuum, if you're talking about sophisticated business process outsourcing organisations where it's a partner-to-partner solution, the term VA seems very inappropriate to me.
Yeah. It's definitely where my head went.
Rant over.
Yeah. All right. And we won't labour that point. Mandy, is it possible to have someone that might just work one or 2 days a week?
We provide dedicated resources, so we do not provide part-time or probably a resource who can work on 1 to 2 days. And I'll tell you why. Is also because the model that we have is a fixed seat model, wherein our resources do not work on multiple accounts. So we don't share our resources on multiple, and that's where they can dedicatedly work only for one brand.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Sense there. Question from John. Do clients get to interview candidates, or are the candidates assigned to clients by IMS?
they absolutely get to speak to candidates, because at the end of the day, they will be working for the client. So it is important for them to understand, if it's Mandy who has been introduced to the client, it is Mandy who is working with the client and not anyone. So yes, they get to speak with them.
That's a very good question for John, and I think it sometimes clients get a little obsessive about that, but the more specific the role is, the more technical the role is, then absolutely the more they should be involved in the selection of that from a group of people. Whereas IMS would probably argue that if it's a relatively common function that they've been asked to do, then IMS's recommendation is personality and things like that aside, is probably what they should go with. So, but yeah, there are some roles that are very technical and very descriptive, and therefore you would need to be involved in the selection process to get that person through.
Okay. I want to talk about the benefits, and obviously there's a range of benefits, but in terms of I guess the critical thing that everybody is focusing on when they think of offshoring is cost saving. So how long is it typically does it take for a business to see a return on their investment?
All right. So I can start, Rod, and feel free to add in whenever you want to. Yeah. So let's say it totally depends the kind of activities that they want to outsource. Mm-hmm. So one is the administrative task, which starts, so the ROI, the return on investment that we are referring to, it starts from day one, because it's all about the administrative tasks, which, so instead of hiring someone in Australia, they're outsourcing it. So the work starts from day one. However, if the role is complex, or if the role is more about the sourcing element or speaking with candidates, and it's all about the placement. So if the offshore team source candidates, do the pre-screening and send the interested available candidates to the offshore team member, it totally depends how soon they are being placed. Right. So that's where. But if you ask me, I would say within 2 to 3 months is when you would start seeing the return on investment, which is minimum to start with. It would be 2 to 3 times. And we have many of our clients who are working with us right now. We are generating more than 6 to 7 times of ROI for them. But again, even in this, when we talk about 6 to 7 times of ROI, it's the tenure that we are working with them and the investment. And when I say investment, which is the time investment and the contribution from both the partners, where we are actually communicating what is working and what is not.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so what the way Mandy described that is actually really important, and things are very easy to measure when it's very closely related to the point where a placement is made and an invoice is sent. So the further up the food chain you are on that particular activity, the easier it is to measure. But recruitment's a complex process, and there's a whole range of functions that need to be taken where it's difficult to make the direct correlation between an activity or an effort that's been made here and an eventual placement. And so you can link them sometimes, but how much was that activity involved in generating that revenue? And so you've got to look at other measures, and they're usually non-financial, like it might be time taken to be able to send a resume to a client or whatever. So, what's the trend on your activity? Are we meeting our requirements? Are we improving? All of those sorts of things. So the return on investment needs to be thought about in different ways for different functions. And that's very unique to each customer.
Okay. Clearly, the growing skill shortages that we're seeing everywhere would, to some degree, offshoring provides a solution to that, I would imagine. So I'm interested to know, Mandy, is there a pattern? Are there top industries that are really, investing in offshoring because of this solution to skill shortages? Is that happening? And what's your view there?
There are different sectors that I'll say, and not just in Australia, but it's the global that I'm referring to. Healthcare, especially nursing and doctors division. That's not going anywhere. So that is one sector wherein they need support. The other sectors, if I talk about Australia, because we're working with more than 50 staffing clients in Australia, and there are multiple sectors. So it's like you name the sector, and we have the expertise and the team working on it. So it is construction, mining, IT and engineering as well.
Right.
Rod, am I missing there, or do you want to add there?
No, that's true. And look, I think it was the World Employment Federation made a comment about 5 years ago or something and said, the world does not have a skills shortage, it's just they're in the wrong place. And so offshoring helps that process. But it also helps to, whenever there's a shortage, it also impacts prices. So it helps to allow things to be run on a more efficient basis in terms of cost efficiency and therefore profitability and so on. And I think when we talk about skills shortages, we should always talk about the skills shortage we've got within the staffing industry, as well as what our clients are going through, which is what drives the staffing industry. And the good thing about the skills shortage is that it does drive the staffing industry, and that means that everybody in this wonderful industry has a job because their clients need them. And so there's very few companies that are involved in actually bringing our clients' skills into the country. Most of the time we're working from within the existing talent pool, and you need to have a robust staffing company to be able to do that. This is something that I think gets addressed in different ways by different people. So the smaller the company, the more they're usually working in a geographic location in a particular narrow sector. And so their challenges and what they're seeing in front of them is quite easily to be defined. Whereas if you're a very large company working possibly across countries, across time zones, across sectors, you're seeing staffing from a different perspective, because you might be looking at it as a procurement function, you might be looking at it in different ways. And so I think, again, each person or each organisation that contacts IMS has got their own unique challenges that they're trying to address, and they're therefore looking for a different solution from IMS.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned then, Rod, about the staffing market and jobs. Mandy, how do you advise firms when they're beginning this journey and they want to communicate, or they should be communicating clearly with their Australian teams, that this isn't about taking jobs away, this is about adding efficiencies? And what do you advise people in terms of managing that process? Because again, I'm sure it comes down to transparency, but there is fear, I think, a genuine fear from people that when they see this is the direction of the company, it means the end for all of us, or it's the beginning of something that could be quite dismal. So do you work with clients on that strategy?
Yes, Leslie, I think when it comes to the fear, and I absolutely get that. So when it comes to that fear of losing their job, is where it is business owners. It is their decision, and it is their call to let the team know that we are trying to help them. As a business owner, they're trying to help their own team. And how, I'll tell you. It's about 360 model, where the team is doing the business development, sourcing, placing candidates, and doing the back office solutions. How do we break it? Is where they need support, which means they focus, as I earlier mentioned, the onshore team can help, and probably they can actually be involved in conversations and with the clients and candidates. And when it comes to the legwork, or maybe I would say a time-consuming task, so they have dedicated teams sitting here who can source candidates, can do the pre-screening, because that saves 60 to 70% of their time. So instead of onshore team doing the sourcing, pre-screening, and then finally the screening and placing it to the end client, let the offshore team members, that means that extended team, source the candidates, share the job description with the team here. They will source relevant candidates. They can speak with them as well. They can give an understanding of the job, pay rates, location, etc. And when they find interested or available candidate, they can actually set up a meeting with the recruiter there in Australia, and they take the final round and submit it to the end client. This not only saves their time, but it actually allows them to do more business development, building the relationship, and so on. So it works hand in hand. And the way this the way operation can be successful is where we have a dedicated person in Australia, which is a dedicated account manager for the offshore team.
Right.
So that there is a conversation, a real-time conversation, a dedicated person here and a dedicated person in Australia.
Is that always necessary?
Sorry?
Is that always necessary? Like if you're a small team in Australia, is that something that...
No, for the small team, it is a point of contact is there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that we share.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
From a business owner or a strategic manager, a senior manager perspective, Leslie, I don't think offshore outsourcing should be treated that differently to any of the other strategic initiatives that an organisation's going to go through. So technology is obviously a great one. Okay, there's lots of technology issues going on at the moment. How do you implement? How do you consider what you're going to do and which processes are going to be affected? And so you can't just walk out of your office and drop it on people and say, tomorrow we're going to do this. I mean, you've actually got to bring your organisation along. I hate the word journey, but there's sometimes difficult to find a different one. Bring the people along on the journey, have the discussions, involve them in what you're investigating, why you're investigating, the reasons you're doing it, and then you've got people who've carefully considered it, and you've got buy-in, and you can implement the solution you come up with. So it shouldn't be that different in terms of the strategic process that the leaders go through, and I don't know what other companies do, but IMS People only works with staffing companies, so it's not a competitor to the industry or to that agency. It's actually there to make the agency more productive. So it's only ever there to support the agency.
Okay, fantastic.
I may add, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
Now, if I may add, also what we do is, because this happened recently, and I think this is actually working out well. When we speak with the business owners, the directors and so on, and of course they're buying the process, they understand that this will be a value addition. But the mindset is, I will have to speak with my team, I'll have to speak with my operations team, and let's see how it sinks in, is where we ask them to involve us in that conversation. Just like this meeting, please arrange another meeting and have all your stakeholders in that meeting. So that it is a one-on-one conversation. We can connect on Teams as well and ask any question, a minute question that comes in your mind, please ask. So that if you're bought into this and if we are proceeding, we are transparent and we answer all your apprehensions that is coming your way. So it is not just the first call that we have, but then also the second call with all the stakeholders who are a little apprehensive, or probably they are pro outsourcing, they know how it operates. So it is always a conversation that we want to have if there are any challenges or apprehensions from the other end.
Fantastic. That's great. A couple of questions to answer. Are the agreements based on fixed term or month to month? How do they work in terms of the arrangements, Mandy?
That's the flexibility that we give to all our partners. We provide a rolling contract month on month. And after the first month, it's a standard 30 days of notice period. So we don't bind you because you have signed an agreement. We will compel you with all the right reasons to be with us by giving you a value-added additional service.
Keeps everybody focused.
Yes, I'm sure. Another question here, what factors should a company consider if they have had a negative experience with offshoring through other agencies?
I would say share. What was the experience? Why did it not work? What was your involvement? How much time did you contribute? How often did you communicate with your team? What was your feedback to the team? Did they work on it or not? So I think when it comes to factors that you want to consider, especially when it fails, is where need to be very clear with the purpose. What did not work there, and ask those questions with the right partner. So, and I'm sure once you come with those experiences, you have so many questions and so many apprehensions, right? So you will come with, all right, so will I be getting a dedicated person? Will this person will be working with me or with some other companies as well? Will my data be shared? And so on. There's so many apprehensions. So ask as many questions as you have before getting into a partnership with the right partner. I mean, there are multiple RPOs, there are multiple agents you're supporting, but then it totally depends when you would choose the right partner. What are the questions you want to know? How does the operate? We also have our own culture and values. And if you go on our website, we have it's charter. IMS charter is what we say, and the values that we have, we live and breathe that. So when we get into a partnership, it is not just us who want to understand their core values and ethos, but it's important for the partner or the client to understand these are our values, and that's what we discuss. And I think it totally depends when we get into such discussions, and when we understand each other's values is where you will actually get to know this probably could be the right partner to work with.
Right. Fantastic. I'm going to do a final call out for any last questions from our audience. And while we wait for those, if there's any people think of, I thought it might be appropriate to ask both of you to share, I guess, that your parting words of advice. If you give people that are either in the process or thinking about it, or looking to maybe expand what they're doing, what advice would you give them to leave with today? Who wants to go first? I'll let you choose who goes first.
So maybe
All right.
I can start, and maybe Rod, you can give your expertise in the end. And because I think you get into such discussions as a role. But then from my end, of course, if you want to make outsourcing, offshoring effective, as I said, it is important to have the right purpose, have the process in place, be transparent in your conversations and in your feedback as well, and then design what you want to outsource, where we can create value. Yeah, so that's what I'll say from my end. Go ahead, Rod.
It's an interesting one. So I'll go right up into the clouds and give my 30,000-foot view here. But we often talk to organisations about their corporate capability, and there are many aspects to corporate capability, and it's not just the recruitment function, but it's also compliance, and it's financial efficiency, and it's all of those sorts of things. And it's quite often and more relevant now to talk about technology as being a corporate capability. Can you identify, assess, run a project, implement, improve, do all of those sorts of things with technology? Well, I think that offshoring is also one of those corporate capabilities you should have, because it gives you the most flexibility for whatever the industry throws at you. So just like you should have, for example, financial flexibility when you walk into a client and they say, could you take over these 20 temps? Yes, I can do that because I know I've got my finances in order. Well, if the client says, could you run these 20 roles for me, or could you take on this extra function? You need to be able to say yes, because I know I can flex with my offshore team and be able to handle that project. So I think offshore outsourcing is one of those capabilities that not just gives you immediate benefit and a return on investment, but it's something that allows your organisation to think a little bit differently. And it's not, you don't do that on the first assignment. You get things in place, you get the communication, you build the trust in the relationship, and then anything's possible. So you sit down and talk about it. So to me, it's a fairly important component of what the modern staffing company should be looking at, to say we're ready to tackle whatever the future throws at us.
Fantastic. I don't think we've got any more questions, and we're pretty much running to time. So unless anybody's got anything they want to ask, I just want to say a huge thank you, both Mandy, particularly for getting up so early today, and obviously Rod as well, who's also in Perth. So you're still a little bit behind us here in New South Wales.
So, sorry to interrupt there. The reason I put this up is that there is a handout at the end, and one of the things that's in the handout is access to some documents. So we'll make sure that gets passed around.
Fantastic. To everyone that joined us today, thank you very much. As I mentioned, the recording will be sent along with the slides. And obviously there's some details there for IMS if you want to ask any further questions, either to Rod or to Mandy. Hopefully we'll see Mandy at the conference in July in Sydney. So another opportunity for people to have a chat with you there and get a bit more personal about what they're looking for and what they need help with. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Rod.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.